Okay, my apologies for not getting through the entire set of slides on Monday. I must have been talking about something else for a moment. The last part of what I wanted to talk about on Monday was to do with the functions of play and why play becomes important. We've talked a lot about the theories about child development, about play to some extent, but this sort of brings it together towards an understanding of why play is important for children in terms of their ongoing development. I've given you a list there of some of the functions of play and how that supports development, and some of this comes from SLE, so I'm recommending you go back and have a good look at SLE, that page 229 to 232. It's only a starting point, and it's one of the reasons we use that book. It's lots of starting points for you to develop on from. So take that as a starting point and then have a look at some of the readings we've put up for week 2, which go into more depth. And I'll touch on one of those in just a moment. In particular, in terms of functions of play and what that can do for children, is play helps with their socialisation. It helps them rehearse and master social skills. So it's not that we expect them to be able to master those social skills without that. They actually need to engage in an activity that makes sense to them, that allows those skills to be mastered. So this is when you start to see things, skills such as sharing, skills such as socialisation, in particular in how to engage in play or engage with others. You'll see some children I mentioned, if you think back to some of the discussions of Mildred Parton, she talks about onlooker play. It's actually really important that children do that so they learn the skill of then how to engage with others, how to move into their play after they've spent some time observing and looking on and how that works. So socialisation is really important. Another one there is mental health, and it's how children gain mastery or control over events. This play helps children to think ahead, how to plan, how to anticipate the consequences of their own actions. It helps them develop resilience. You've got an interest in resilience, and for me it's one of the most important aspects of what we do with children around play. Is there's some work out by Hunter Valley Health with the government. It's called Responsibility, and that program talks about how we can develop resilience with children and support their ongoing resilience through the use of play. It's worth having a look at. It's around the accumulation of facts. Children actually learn about the world by engaging in it and an understanding of that. So we're talking about the development of language. We're talking about how they modify their understanding of the world. They may have an understanding of the world, for an example, about how families exist, that a family for one particular child might be mum, it might have some grandparents attached to it, but that's their concept of family. No other children, no father perhaps in that context. That's what they assume family is. But by engaging in play with others who bring their facts into the play, you expand that knowledge. So a child might join the play and decide and tell their context, which might be 2 parents, but no grandparents, and a number of siblings along with that. So their version is different. So a child starts to accumulate facts and knowledge about the world beyond their own family, beyond their own current social context, and take a greater expanse in understanding that. Cognitive development, which Piaget would say is probably the most important aspect of the development of the use of play. That's when the child will also start to see the world from the perspective of another. Because at this stage, if you think about Freud, children are still quite egocentric. They're not thinking beyond the self. But as they engage with others, they start to understand that there are other views, there are other perceptions, there are other understandings of what that might be like. They also gain understandings of physical aspects of the world. So they'll start to get understandings in science, concepts, math, literature. When think about Gardner's work, music as well. They all start to develop. There's also some development of attitudes and personal traits. So that creativity, intrinsic motivation, perseverance, self-confidence, and put resilience back in there as well. All of those things start to develop as they engage in play activities. And I've added motor skill development there, which I think is sort of self-evident, particularly in terms of the slide I've put up there. But without physically engaging in an activity, children aren't going to develop their muscles, their strength, their coordination skills, and those sorts of aspects of motor skill. The gross version, there's also fine motor skills that start to develop through play activities. So play seems to have this ability to encompass just about everything we want to develop in children, and we can do it very easily in an activity that children really want to engage in. Play, however, though, has some particular aspects that needs to be part of play for it to actually work. Now, it's worth going back and having a look at the Talagong and App book chapter we put up, chapter 1 from that book. It's on Leo for you. And they define these aspects of play and what it needs to be very, very clearly. And it's a nice, well-written piece for you to give you an understanding. Play has to be enjoyable. If it's not pleasurable, if it's not fun, it's not going to happen. And I think the reason I chose the image I've chosen is that in the background there, every single one of those children has a smile on their face, is enjoying it, and probably hamming up for the camera just a fraction, but it's fun. If it wasn't fun, they wouldn't be doing it. It has to be voluntary. You cannot force a child to play. They have to choose to do it, and they have to choose to do it in a way that actually has some meaning for them. So taking on to the next part, it has to be meaningful. It has to be symbolic, so children have to be able to use equipment and tools in ways that make sense for them in terms of their play. And it needs to be symbolic in terms of, quite often it can be around learning an aspect of something that's happening in their world. In this particular image here, the children have taken tools that are used in a different way and put them into play in another way. You often see photos of or images going back into the 1800s where children used hoops and sticks and would knock them along as a play. It's interesting to see the same activity being done with different tools being used to create that. So that's an empty, I'm assuming it's a plastic bottle, may not be, and a tyre, used in exactly the same way they would have used in Victorian England in the 1800s for a very similar activity. Play needs to have some rules around it, needs to have boundaries around it, and that's not boundaries we give it, it's the boundaries that children give it. And it may be in terms of specific rules they lay down for the play, but it also may be in their engagement with play. And it may not be an explicit rule that we understand, that play has to occur this way, or that you be the mum and you be the dad, those sorts of rules. It may be around how they just engage in it, especially as young babies. And it needs to be episodic, and by that it's the sorts of things that they can come back to. So play needs to be able to be repeated. You need to be able to do it again and again and again. And in terms of it being episodic, it needs to add things to it. So if you're watching a child play in a particular activity, they don't repeat the activity in the same way each time. They add things to it. They add some equipment to it. They add some new information they've found. Something else has changed in the context of their world. So when they bring that into the play has a different feel to it. It's almost like having chapters in a book and you watch the play develop through these particular episodes. Again, go back and have a look at that piece, that chapter 1 from Talagog and App, and go through these particular reasons for play occurring. This can actually be a really nice start to a poster about play, about the importance of play. Or one aspect of these could be a really nice part of an importance around that aspect of play and what that might mean for children, and could look good in as I said, in a poster that you might use for parents. This is a quote that comes from Liz Wood, and you do have, and that's in that chapter again from Talagong and App. Liz has said here that play provides the ideal conditions in which to learn and enhances the quality of learning through intrinsic motivation and self-initiated activity. That's almost that play is voluntary. Play is a natural activity. Children know intuitively what they need. They can be themselves and are free to explore and experiment. And that experiment becomes really important. About children can try things out. You know, a child picks up a rattle for the first time, and it might be that they're more interested in the hand movement about picking up the rattle. But then they'll start to explore what that rattle can do. So they might shake it, they might just move it, they might chew on it, getting an idea of what that the rattle feels like, what it tastes like, what they're able to make that rattle do. All of a sudden they hear a sound, they've experimented, they've shook it, they've got a sound, they've learnt something new, they've explored the piece of equipment. So it's not just about giving the child an activity. Whatever we give them, whatever we do with them, seems to have this ability, it needs to be allowed to be explored and experimented. And that's when I come into some concerns about some of those toys that simply have a one dimension. That is, you push the button, this happens, and that's it. That to me doesn't allow children to explore and experiment, because once they've done it, it's over. The activities I prefer to see children have are ones that allow them to develop the activity in using the equipment that we provide for them, or the equipment they think they perhaps need for that. And this is where we can start to get that link between the developmental context of play and link it with particular development. So we're sort of taking hints to that, but I'm going to pick particularly on Piaget and Parton in this. And we've mentioned that play supports cognitive development. Piaget was very clear when he wrote his work that he could link his stages of cognitive development to stages of play. And if you go back and have a look at the slides from earlier, we had the list of stages of play, and we had his cognitive development list on the next page. You can actually match them very clearly. And Parton was very much the same. In her social development, she claimed that children develop language. But as they develop language, their play reflects a social growing awareness. I'm going to suggest you can go back to virtually all of those theories, and those theories we've talked about, and then think about how those theories are seen, or where they're seen in play with children. And I'm going to challenge you to find that you can't do it. Every single one of those, as far as we're concerned, fits very, very clearly into this belief that play supports children's development in all ways, shapes and forms. Some have a more, in terms of the theories we've talked about, have a more clearer focus on particular aspects, as Piaget did with cognitive development, Mildred Parton did with social development. But you can see it all the way through, and that's for me one of the reasons why I suggest that I'm not particularly focused on one particular theorist. I have used all those theorists and parts of their work in all my practice all the way through. And I think it's important for us to understand the theorists, so we've got something we can put in place when we start talking with our programming and what that can look like. Okay, I just wanted to touch on some other reasons that play becomes important, and this has come from a lot of the brain research that's out in the moment, and if you're interested in reading more, Jack Shonkoff is a person that I would also recommend, and he talks about the neural pathways work. But basically we're saying that the language structures of the brain become increasingly active as children achieve toddlerhood. So we're starting to know that as the language structures of the brain become active, children at the stage will actually start to use those particular parts of their brain anyway, because they're actually achieving toddlerhood, where they start to speak a lot more than they had before. If you're interested in this, I've got in week 7 a TED talk by a woman called Alison Gopnik, and Alison talks about what we can see in the brain when children start to use language and how that changes. It's not a very long piece. I think it's about 15 minutes off the top of my head. It's in week 7 because that's when we start talking about some stuff around language development. But if you want to go ahead and have a look at that now, it's certainly worth having a look at, and then perhaps look at it again in week 7. It's a really fascinating piece about how she actually set the research up, but also in particular about what they see happening in the brain. So certainly go and have a look at that. And the other thing they've found in some of this brain research is that there's a rapid growth in that frontal lobe network, this bit sort of in here, related to higher cognitive functions. So things such as problem solving. So they've found that when children engage in problem solving, that area, it's around when they engage in symbolic and rule governed play. So as children start to engage in that activity, that requires that rule-governed play, and if you think about Mildred Parton, you know roughly when that happens, that this part of the brain starts to show rapid growth. So what we're saying is that as children engage in parts of play that require further connections in the brain actually does that. It actually starts to grow in a more rapid way or becomes more active as children use those play activities. Another reason to keep play occurring. And I just wanted to finish with this is the last slide, and it's from Searage, Blatchford and Selva's work, which you also have a copy of. And they say that the most effective preschool practice achieves a balance between opportunities provided for children to benefit from teacher-initiated group work, that's the stuff that we decide we want to do, and in the provision of freely chosen yet potentially instructive play activities. So this is Sarah Eram saying that let's not make sure it's all teacher-initiated, and let's not make sure it's all chosen by the child, but there needs to be a balance in there where the child actually suggests which way they want to work. We get that and we support that by initiating some particular activities, but still allowing some of that free stuff to occur on the side. So it might be that you have a whole lot of teacher-initiated group work in that's some of the activity work we're doing in the activity rounds, but also you're going to have some activities that you set up that children are free to choose to participate in or not, or it might be that they've chosen an activity which you support from by providing them with the equipment that they perhaps need. Okay, that's a bibliography for this week. In particular, in this last section, we have focused a lot on the work of Searage Blatchford's, Slee's, the Tailing Ogden and App, and some work of Elizabeth Wood's or Liz Wood. Certainly go back and have a read of those. They will give you a really good grounding if you're starting to think about that poster that you need to do for a couple of weeks' time. Okay, in terms of that poster, just a reminder that we do want that in the week before it's due to submit. We will give you some feedback, and you'll get some feedback from your peers on that to help you finish that poster. So have it at a really good stage where you've talked about colours, where you've worked out the language, where you've worked out exactly what you want to have a look at. Go and have a look at the posters down the side of the corridor, just off the early childhood room. There's 4 up there. Keep in mind that 2 of them are too big, 2 of them are the right size, but start to think about what makes those posters work. Okay, thanks for taking the time to come and listen to the add-on slides, and I look forward to seeing you all next week.